In this video, we'll take a look at the spacing and alignment classes in Bootstrap. So we'll begin by talking about margin and padding classes that were added to Bootstrap 4. We'll then move and talk about aligning items inside of divs. So whether that be text or whether it be items like other div tags that are child div tags to the parent or images inside of a div tag, things like that. We'll talk about floating items and how to responsively float, and how to clear fix floating problems. We'll look at how to center content and things like that. So let's begin by adding a new web page, and we're going to call this spacing and alignment.html. And we're going to start with our template. Grab the content, paste it in. And then what I want to do is actually remove this cell style because we're going to need something a little more robust. In fact, I'm going to use the styles that we used in our nesting video because we needed some way to differentiate outer and inner div tags. And we're going to use that concept again here in just a moment. We also have a nice little outline that will give us a 2 pixel wide dashed red border. So now inside of the sample row that we have, let's go ahead and remove that. I'm going to change this from an MD to an XS and just go there to that point. And so we've got one cell that's going to take up half of the row. And now what I want to do is paste in an inner div tag. And I don't want to talk too much about what you'll see inside of this div tag. It's just lorem ipsum for text. However, besides the inner and the outline classes that were defined here from our nesting example, we also have these two strange classes defined by Bootstrap, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. But before we begin and get too far, I want to talk about the difference between margin and padding and explain what you see and why you see it. Looks like I forgot to add the outer. There we go. So let's do that again. All right, so we have the outer and the inner div tags, and then we also have this red border. Now we'll start from the inside and work our way out and talk about all the space that you see. So first of all, we have our content, in this case, just text. And the distance between that textual content and that red border is the padding. And the padding was added as a result of using a Bootstrap class that we'll look at in a moment. Padding essentially moves content inside of a div tag towards the center. We can set it on all the sides or no sides at all. So it's butted right up against all four borders of the div tag. Or we can set it specifically on the left, right, top, or bottom. And finally, we can choose to set it on just the left and the rights or just the tops and the bottoms. All right. So then, in addition to that, there's a space between that red dashed line and I guess you could say the boundary for that lighter blue color. And that's actually composed of two different things, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But the top and the bottom and most of the left and the right are margin that were defined by the inner div tag. So a div tag can say to its parent, I need more room, so give me some space to operate here. And so padding pushes the content inside of the border. Margin pushes the content outside of the border. Okay. Then you'll notice that there's a difference in spacing between top and bottom, and that looks about equal. But then when you compare it with the left and the right, it looks like left and the right have just a little bit more of the blue area than the tops and the bottoms. And the reason is because whenever we defined our cell using the column XS6, you recall from our discussion about the column classes that they will automatically add padding, 15 pixels of padding. I think it gave it an actual rem value in Bootstrap 4, right? But essentially works out to 15 pixels of padding on the left and the right sides. So whenever we run our application, what we're getting, the first 15 pixels here are going to be the padding from the outer div tag, and then the rest of that space will be defined by the inner div tag as a margin. All right, so that's why you see the two, they're actually cumulative. So padding and margin from an inner and outer get added together to create the total amount of fluff area, I guess you could say, between the border of the inner div tag and the outer div tag. All right. All right, so let's move on and talk about then how we were actually able to define that space. You might guess that it has something to do with these classes, you'd be right. And by virtue of the fact that you see the letter M versus the letter P, I'm guessing you can guess that one of the first elements is in the pattern. You can see there's like a pattern of 3 items in each of these classes. The first item will dictate whether the spacing is margin or padding. The second item will dictate which side it should be applied to. Now, the letter A in both cases means I want you to apply the margin and padding respectively to all 4 sides. However, there are other options as well, like we talked about, and we'll see them in action in just a moment. The final is a number, and it can be 0, 1, 2, or 3. And basically, these are in rems. So 1 means 1 rem. We already talked about what a rem is. I don't want to go into that again. 2 is double that. 3 is triple than 1 rem, so 3 rems of space. And since that's relative, obviously that can change on a document by document basis. There's also the value 0, which means I want absolutely no, in this case, no margin or no padding applied to all sides. So we'll see that at use as well. So let's begin by looking at some examples of these, and I'll let you kind of reason your way through them. I'm going to create a second row, and I'm going to actually make each of the columns or each of the cells 4 columns in width, and we'll just copy them and paste them twice in here. And then I'm going to copy the whole row now that we've got our little template and paste that again below it. So in this top one we'll do margin, in this bottom one we'll use padding. So in the top one, let's create some margin. So in this case, we're going to go M for margin, and then I want to apply to tops and bottoms. So I can either use 2 individual classes, or I could just use 1 class, the Y class. Remember, Y will affect tops and bottoms, X will affect lefts and rights. So we'll start off with Y and say we want 1 rem of space on the top and the bottom as margin for this div tag to push away from its parent. And the second example here, we're going to use margin, but we're only going to set the left margin, but we'll use 2 rems worth of space in that margin. And then finally, we'll create another margin. We'll apply it to the top and say it should be 3 rems worth of space margin on the top. Let's go ahead and run the app and see what we have so far. All right, so we're focusing on this center one here. Remember, we haven't touched the bottom one just yet. And this first one, you'll recall we're applying 1 rem's worth of space to top and bottom. There's also padding on the left and the right from the parent container. We'll just ignore that for the moment. Here in the second example, there's no margin on top and bottom. However, on the left, we have a little bit of that padding from the parent, and then a 2 rems on the left, and then just some padding on the right from the parent. And then finally, we have, in this third one, we have margin, 3 rems worth of margin top, none applied anywhere else, and still we get that padding from the parent on the left and the right. Okay, so now let's touch padding, and I'm going to show you how we can eliminate that padding. You might be able to guess it. On that outer div that actually defines the cell itself, we will set on all sides the padding equal to 0. However, on the inner one, we'll set the padding on all sides equal to 1. So that should be interesting to see what that comes out with. The next one here, we'll just kind of compare what we did previously. So instead of ML2, we'll go PL2. And instead of MT3, we'll go T3. And see what we get. All right. So in this first case, none of the padding from the parent bleeds through. So we don't see the parent at all, the parent cell. Instead, we only see the child div tag, and it has its 1 rem of padding on all sides, as you can see kind of here on the left, top, and right. Next up, we have 2 rems of padding on the left. And then finally, we have 3 rems of padding on the top, pushing our text all the way to the bottom. All right. So hopefully you can understand the pattern and you can play around with the classes until you find exactly what you need. Just remember that little pattern, and IntelliSense will help you figure that out as well. So that's awesome. All right, next up we want to talk about alignment. So specifically I want to start with text alignment. And probably the easiest way to do this would be to grab another row here. And I'm going to strip out all of our padding stuff that we added. And here what we want to do is apply some classes that will tell the text inside of the div how it should align itself, or how it should wrap or justify itself. So we'll start out with the word text, and let's, in this first example, just say, let's go when you're at the smallest size and up, then let's center the content. Notice that we can also say text, once you're in the largest size, then let's align it to the right. So all of these are cascading upwards, and we have all of the sizes, just like we did with the columns, to define and change the alignment on a responsive basis. Okay. So here in this next example, let's actually use something different. In this case, we're going to use a text justify. And what this will do is try to fill the entire area and justify the text from the left side to the right side. And you'll see that especially as we scrunch the web browser in and make it smaller. And then finally, we're going to use text no wrap. And what this will do is say, in no situation should you ever do a line break. So even if it's running off the screen, that's fine. We'll deal with it. And there might be situations where you need data to be displayed and not be wrapped to the next line because it might cause confusion. So we would use that there. So let's see what we get here. And so let's start here, and this is going to look kind of weird, but we're going to start at the small size, and you'll notice this first one is centered, and as we move it and make it larger, it's aligned to the right. All right, so again, responsively, we can change the how the alignment works for text inside of a div by using the text dash size dash left, center, or right. Next, you can see how the text inside here is justified. It attempted to, it's not a very long passage of text, so maybe if we were to make this smaller, you can see how it just adds as much space as it needs to in order to get it to justify if possible. Finally, we have the no wrap here, and even though it kind of goes off to the right-hand side, outside of the boundary of our div tags, it still will just go ahead and faithfully present that data. So if you ever need to do that, there is a class for that. Great. All right, so let's move on now and talk about floating. And there are classes to create floats inside of our application. And I think the easiest way to do this would be to work outside of the boundary of our container. And we'll just go here, and actually I'm going to grab some of this block of paragraph tags here. And we're going to start off by using a div. And inside this div, I'm going to go ahead and say class outer, just so we can see it nicely. And then on the inside of that, I'm going to use an image. I'm going to set the source equal to a placehold it. And we'll make it like 200 by 200. All right, and I think that's a good way to start this. And also, let's add some text here. So let's add a paragraph. This is some text. Probably should use the lorem ipsum, but that's all right. All right, so let's see what we have here to begin with. Okay, so all is nice. Currently, right now, everything is flowing top to bottom. So we define a paragraph, and then we define an image below it, and it's all inside of our div tag. And we can see that because of the light blue color. But what if we decided that we wanted to float this image? And so floating, you'll recall, is giving us the opportunity to move an image or a div block or whatever the case might be to the right or to the center and allow text or other items to flow around it. So in this case, it might be useful to change something up just a little bit here. I'm going to grab a big long paragraph this time of lorem ipsum, like so, and replace that with that. Great. Okay. And then next up, what I want to do is float this guy to the right. So I'm going to use class equal, and then there's a number of these pull dash, and then I can do pull using extra small, or I can say only for the small size and up, only for the large size and up, and so on. But let's just go with XS for now. And then I can say I want this pulled to the right in this particular case. Now let's see what our example yields. All right, and so here we have a problem with our image floated to the right, but not clearing properly. And so to fix this issue, what we're going to have to do is apply clear fix to the outer container. So let's go clear fix, and hopefully that'll fix the problem. Let's see. All right, that's better. At least both items are inside of the same div tag, so that's a start. However, if we want the text to flow around, it will define the image first and then rerun it, and that should fix that problem. All right, there we go. So now we're able to let the text flow to the left, and we float our image to the right. Let's change up the image size a little bit. We'll say it's 100 by 100 instead. And by doing that, we should see some wrapping around the bottom as well, like so. Okay. So that is how we would then float and clear any float problems using clearfix, changing the order of items so that they arrange themselves correctly for our application. Great. All right, and finally, we already saw how we can center our text. But what if we want to center our one item inside of another, like a div tag inside of another div tag? In that case, we can, let's just use the same example here. And there's actually something called center block. So let's use that instead. And let's see what we get. All right, and then you can see how center block will eliminate the floating. So it takes up its own area since it is an entire block, but it does center it correctly. So we have that option as well. Okay, so we talked about quite a bit in this lesson. I know it's a little long, but we talked about margin and padding. We looked at how to align text and how to align other block items like images, and then also how to float and fix any float problems with clear fix again. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on. In the next lesson, we'll see you there. Thanks.